Hello guys, this is my Ancient Magus Bride, and in theme, I'm wearing my Bone Daddy shirt. So this is like the only piece of merch I have. Like, I own the manga, I own all the light novels and the like specialty books, but it's hard to come by because it doesn't get enough love. And this is why I'm doing this video, because I love the Ancient Magus Bride. I love folklore. I love mythology. And today these are just my thoughts and what my take is on the anime. So if you haven't watched the anime, go watch it, because I am solely talking about the anime, but in doing that, I am giving spoilers. So, just so you know. So I will also be talking about my theories and talking about mythology that the writer directly took from to write into their series, and they did it very accurately, and maybe you'll learn something. And maybe you'll learn that you also will love the Ancient Magus Bride, and that you really want to go watch it, because you should, and go buy the manga because it's excellent and the art is phenomenal. So not only is the writing good, but the art is just as beautiful. Anyways, so let's get on with the video. So when I originally watched the first episode when it aired, because I did do weekly reviews on the episodes because I loved it so much. And I will have some notes on here, so if I'm looking over that way, it's because I have notes there, and I also have notes here. So, when I first watched it, I was immediately hooked. I think the opening is beautiful. The soundtrack, oh my gosh. This is my personal thing, I liked the first opening way better than the second opening. I thought it had way more character. I found it way more elegant. I found it it was stunning. And I was hoping it would become an instant classic. I feel like it just didn't get as talked about as much, because I know, like, when I was doing reviews on it, that was when I gained a lot of followers on Instagram, and like, I feel like more people should have been posting, or else, like, because some of my clips would get like over 6,000 people like watching it. So I was like, why aren't there more posts, basically, that mine should just kind of meld in? But, so the series starts off with Chise, who has sold herself into slavery because she planned on ending her life. She comes from a very upsetting background, that her mother tried to kill her, and her father abandoned her and her mother with her brother. And so far in the anime, we do not know what happened to the father. We know one night he left, and that later drove Chise's mother mad, but she ended up letting her go and ending her own life instead. I think it was her way so she didn't ever think that she would ever try to harm Chise. And I do love Chise's character, and I have my notes here. So, I do love that she changes a lot, and the whole, like, thing with her and Elias being Stockholm Syndrome isn't accurate, because she's even told she can leave if she wants to, and she does leave at one point when Ruth and Elias betray her, and even then he doesn't, like, force her to come back or anything. It breaks him, but he doesn't force anything on her, and I think that really shows growth in his character. Elias is an immortal being. We don't really know what he is. My theory is he is a Wendigo, which comes from folklore, actually, in my area, because I live in Canada. And where I live in Canada, it gets very, very cold. Baby, stop jumping. You're making my camera shake. And historically, when it gets really, really cold in winter and people who aren't prepared for it, some people resort to cannibalism, historically, which, not anymore, hopefully, but, and there is, like, an actual psychosis for being a Wendigo, which is like a insatiable thirst for human flesh. But for me, especially in the memory of when Lyndall first met Elias and finds him, Elias even says, "I believe I've eaten human flesh." And when he loses control after Cartaphilus / Joseph does something to him, he kind of like drools over Chise, but doesn't harm her. It's kind of like also in that scene in Howl's Moving Castle, which I drew parallels from, which is also one of my favorite movies. When he goes all like in Howl, and the same type of thing. So Wendigos are what happens when it's like an evil spirit, or it can be a person who has eaten human flesh and gone mad from it. And some people believe that Elias is like a hybrid between a fae and a human, which I think is a very viable theory. And a lot of the things too with the characters in the show, because Chise is surrounded by fae, which are like mythical creatures, and even like Tatiana, the fae queen, that they're selfish creatures because their moral code isn't the same way as humans, and you need to understand that if you're going to watch the series and appreciate it. For example, I have dyslexia, so when I read my first chapter book series, I was very proud of myself, and the first chapter book series I ever read was Fablehaven, because my sisters had read it like years earlier. I think I was like 15 or 16 when I read it first on my own, and I loved it. And there is a character who does talk about how water nymphs or mermaids or river maids, whatever you want, they don't feel bad about like drowning humans. And the reason is, it's not that they're evil, it's because their lifespan is so much longer that our lifespan are significant of swatting a fly, because it's so short in comparison. So even like when Chise leaves and it like breaks Elias, the Tatiana, the Fae Queen, comes and she's like, oh, we can go force Chise to come back, and then she'll live with us on our side. And he's like, no, we can't do that, because that's like, me not listening to her is what led to the situation. And so I wouldn't call Tatiana or any of the like those Fae evil. I would just call them Fae. But where is it? Sorry, I have my notes here. And then Ruth is Chise's familiar. I do like how they kind of drew parallels between Chise and Elizabeth, or Isabella, which was his like master, who she was teased and she ended up dying through a freak accident, but it was through bullies forcing and chasing her. And it's how Ruth will also, because he like kind of imprinted on Chise, now will do anything for her. And that is what leads to an issue later on. While I love Chise's character, she is not perfect. She sees so little in her life that she always is sacrificing it. And that's what usually leads to arguments between Elias and Chise, that they won't talk to each other and she will go self-sacrifice. Like, so people loved it when, like, Elias is feeling, because Elias is Chise's, like, teacher in magic, because she is a slave baggy, or some people are saying slave vega. I'm not sure which is the proper translation. I'll say slave baggy for now, which is like a magical creature, but she will not live much longer because it does have an effect on her body. And that's, at first, it was just an experience to Elias, but as he grows attached to her and grows to love her, that he wants to keep her alive because he cares about her. And when the anime aired, it actually had caught up to the manga, but there were still like 2 episodes left, so I think they wrapped it up really, really well. And so he is her magic teacher and she is his emotional teacher, because he doesn't really experience human emotions. Which is funny because Chise is also like very void of emotion because of the abuse she endured when she was younger. And when Elias first experienced emotions, he says when he's lonely he's feeling cold. The house without her is cold. And she teaches him, like, and then he gets so happy or excited when he's like, oh, that's it, I was lonely. And I think that is really neat way to interpret it. And it's like, oh, and now he's feeling love for her, which and now he's feeling overprotective of her, which I think is cool. But when Chise goes and spends time with Lyndall with the dragons, Lyndall kind of jokes that he's like Elias's dad because he found Elias and got Elias his name given to him by Lyndall's master. That when he lost control and was Chise had a memory of Elias over her with his like face like ha. And when Lyndall tells her, he's like, oh, what do you think if like Elias has eaten like humans before, like what is your stance on that? She's like, well, I thought it was just a dreaming, but maybe it's an actual memory. And when she later confronts Elias on that, she says to him, do I look tasty? And he immediately wants to wipe her memory of it. He's like, that's a memory you don't need. Because his biggest fear is her being scared of him. Like when when Chise gets stabbed in the chest by Cartaphilus, Elias loses control of his body and is in like his monstrous form. And when Chise comes to, she's like going close to him. He keeps backing away, and he's like, aren't I terrifying to you? And she's like, no, but you probably can't get into the house with that big size. Silky will probably get mad if you break the door. And he's like, yes. So and then Chise stops him when he tries to wipe her memory, because she's like, no, all my memories are precious, even like the painful ones. And he's like, but I don't want you scared of me. She's like, me not knowing is more scary than just having the memory. And so it's how they talk things through. And later, Stella actually builds a friendship with a human girl named Stella. And this is when a lot of conflict comes up. But even when Chise keeps doing, like, she does stuff when she's told not to. Because, once again, she doesn't see her life of value because of what she's been through. And she slowly begins to see value in her being alive. And it's a really heartbreaking scene that leads to a really big conflict in the anime. And she ends up getting really sick because she makes a potion which will have a big toll on her body when she's already very weak. And the fairy king, or the fae king, comes and he's like, let's take her to our side because that'll help. But even the doctor there's like, you would have done better in a human hospital. And it's how, once again, the fae, like, they love Sleighbaggy. They think they're very drawn to them. That he would rather just bring her to his side because they want her over there than actually maybe her being safe. Which is just how they work. They are very self-serving creatures because, once again, they're not humans, and we can't hold them out of human status. We can say stuff is wrong, but we also need to kind of understand. And I will talk more about Cartaphilus and Joseph in a bit. I'm just trying to get through everything because my thoughts are all mishmash. But when Chise builds a relationship with, and like, she doesn't even understand her own magic. Like, she sings Elias a lullaby and he falls asleep and he will not wake up. But when Stella keeps coming over, Elias basically turns into like his like kind of dog form and he runs away from the house. And he so she can turn into like other animals because she has this like skin she can put on, and she chases him down, and he is experiencing jealousy. And if like we teach our children very young, it's okay to have an array of emotions, but how you react is the issue. So, for example, from like the first 4 years of my daughter's life, she did not like me talking to anybody. She didn't like me holding anybody else. I have a best friend who I've known since I was 4 years old, and every time she'd come over, my daughter would get upset and jump on me and wouldn't want me talking to her. And it's normal. It's normal jealousy, but we teach our children young that people can have more than one friend. And Elias is like millennia old. He's never been taught this, and he's never really experienced jealousy either. So for a very powerful immortal being to experience jealousy leads to a big conflict. So she runs after him, and he even says, listening to your voices oddly made me want to leave the home. He's like, and I wanted to run away. He's like, but when I saw that you were chasing me, it made me happy, but I also couldn't stop. And she's like, what you're feeling is jealousy, it's fine. So she tries to get up, and he's like, no, and he wraps himself around her, and he kind of like chomps, doesn't bite her, but he like chomps on her shoulder, which it looks scary because he's got a skull for a head, but it's pretty normal in jealousy in humans too, like chomping on your partner's shoulder, like just like home, but not actually biting. And she like he's just trying to deal with this, expresses frustration and confusion because it's scary and he doesn't understand. And Chiza even says, even when he's obviously being very jealous of her, she says, Elias might have been the same way. Can I allow myself the conceit of thinking that's how much he thinks of me? Because she feels jealousy when he has others around too. It's how, like, girl, you're not conceited. But even, like, there's, like, the Protect Chize squad, which is Silky, Ruth, and Elias. She tries to talk him out of it, like, hey, let's go home. And it's the same with, like, ancient, like, Greek gods, if you've read mythology. They're, like, immortal beings with superpowers, and they throw child tantrums that leads to devastation. And Chize tries to coerce him into stopping and letting her go and, like, talking it out. And he's not listening, so, like, he's holding her, and he won't let her go. And so she has a knife, and she's like, hey, you better listen to me, or you're, like, you gotta snap out of it. And he gets really concerned, because his number one concern is her well-being. Because he doesn't understand right now. He doesn't understand what he's doing. And so she like, pricks herself, so a drop of blood goes from her neck, and he immediately, like, lets go, and he's upset, and he's remorseful, and he's saying, he's like, you scared me, and she's like, you scared me, how about we go home and we talk things through? And then but he's still confused on emotion when you put them into words, so he's like, oh, so you were angry? She's like, yeah, a little bit. And so they end up going home, and they talk things out. And that's when she ends up singing him the lullaby, which puts him to sleep. And it's funny, when she wakes him up, she gets, like, a potion, and she just, like, shoves it really deep. She, like, cranks open his, like, skull mouth, and because of the way his head is, he has to, like, sleep in his belly with his head this way. It's really cute. And she, like, shoves it in there, and he wakes up. I don't know if that did it or the potion, but he's up again. And it's crazy too, because it takes, like, all takes over a year, and I like the little details they put into the anime, like Chize's hair is growing longer, and I really like that. And, like, everybody knows how to get to Elias. Like, they know, like, Chize's his number one priority now, and so they're like, well, if we want to get our way with him, we will just say she's gonna die. Like, even Tatiana does this. So, when Chize got injured one of the many times, she says, she's like, if you truly care for her, she would find happiness if you allowed her to abandon humanity. Otherwise, that girl will surely die soon. And, like, even when they go to the coven with the witches, they, are trying to manipulate Elias. It's like, well, you might not want to listen to us, but we can maybe save Chize's life. And she does end up getting cursed by a dragon, because, once again, she wasn't really listening. But it is kind of funny when they go to the auction. Elias has kind of slowly started to embrace his jealousy, and, like, that Chize cares for him. So he even says to one of them, he goes, that girl is mine, that's what Chize wants. And same with, like, when Elias disappears because, like, his body's out of whack and he doesn't want to scare her, she turns into a bear and she goes, help me find what is rightfully mine. And when they get the dragon out and everything, she ends up getting cursed by it and she gets really injured. And when that happened, Elias got, like, kind of singed right on the face, and he's fine, like, he's fine, but she is not doing okay. And so he gets really upset with her because she's not protecting herself. And so when she first wakes up, she says, are you burned anywhere? And he's like, you don't realize you're in worse shape than I am, do you? She's like, actually, not really. And so she's, once again, but Elias gets upset with her because she's not using her life of value. She doesn't see it. And he goes and, like, kind of locks himself in his room for a couple days. And it's where Chise and him have a really, like, sad talk. And he talks about how, like, when he first, like, purchased her, he just kind of did it on a whim. And how he was like, oh, I'll just teach you for fun. I've never met a sleigh beggy and other, you know, powerful magical tools. But he never wanted her to be a tool. He just wanted to teach her. But now he genuinely wants her to live. And he's like, the fact that he's like, I'm gonna cry. He's like, you say you'll stay with me, but he's like, the thought that one day you'll die and go somewhere else without me, he's like, I can't stand that thought. And she even says, she's like, right when I've just decided that I actually want to live. And it's like a really heartfelt talk, and that's why it breaks my heart that Elias allows his jealousy to win over him, and he does something horrific, and we're gonna talk about that. Yeah, so they go to the witch's coven and go through that, but he decides that he will do anything to keep her alive. And the witches, once again, this is through manipulation, because they know he'll do anything for Chise to survive. That the witches tell him the only way a life can be saved is for another life to be exchanged for it. So, and this is what I don't understand is, like, Ruth is connected to Chise emotionally. So the fact that he went along with this is kind of crazy. So he gets Stella, because Elias, like, kind of kidnaps her, and he's going to exchange Stella's life for Chise's. And he says to Ruth, he's like, Ruth, you would do absolutely anything to keep Chise alive, wouldn't you? And he's like, yes, you don't even have to ask. And they knock her out, and she stabs herself to basically wake up. And she this is when she runs away. And when she gets Stella and tells her to run, Elias apologizes, and she goes, for what? And he goes, for planning to sacrifice Stella in your stead. And she's like, why would you do this? We were going to talk things out. And he says, he's like, I don't remember ever making that promise. And so she calls one of the Fae to protect her as she runs. And Elias is just kind of left stunned, but he has turned basically full monster, and because he is broken, and he's just kind of going through the motions, like, why am I bothering to be alive if she's not here? Like, what's the point, basically? And she has gone off actually with Cartaphilus/Joseph, and he's making a deal with her, and basically also just manipulating her, because that's what Joseph's Cartaphilus does. So, before we talk about some of Chise's memories, we will talk about Cartaphilus and Joseph. So, this is, once again, more mythology taken. So, Cartaphilus is straightly taken from the biblical folklore of the wandering Jew, who apparently mocked and cast a stone upon Jesus on the cross, so God cursed him to wander the earth forever. So he's immortal, but his body still rots with age. And I believe, from what I got from the anime, that Joseph came from a family of necromancer. His parents were both dead. He can kind of talk to the dead, and because he's able to fuse his body to Cartaphilus, my idea is that. So he ended up wanting to leave his town, but he finds Cartaphilus, who was buried alive at one point. But because Cartaphilus can't really heal, he's like, oh, why don't we just fuse bodies? And that later leads to Joseph now being stuck with the same curse. And he can't, like, Cartaphilus, because he's been alive, he doesn't even remember. And he just kind of seeks to give people suffering. Because he's like, if I have to suffer, everybody has to suffer. And that's my issue with the character. Like, what he's going through is very tragic, but just because you're suffering doesn't mean it's okay. But he does call it cheesy. He's like, why is it you trying to, like, end your life at any given stance and me making people suffer any different? Which there is a difference, but in the memories, to just make her upset is the memory of when she's a child and her mom tries to take her life, and something that I really loved, and it worked so well in the anime is such a good adaptation, that I like that Chise didn't forgive her mother. Because she says, she's like, I had a lot of wonderful memories of you, but that all died that day you did that to me. And she's like, so you're not my real mom, you're the mom in my memories. And she says how she can't forgive her for what she's done, but she is thankful that she took her hands off her, because how else would she have been able to find all the people she cares about now and the one person who she loves, which is now Elias. So she says, I won't forgive you, but I will forget you, and I will leave you here and move on. And I think that's more powerful. Like, I grew up with my mom being always like, you gotta forgive everybody, even your abusers. And it's like, no, you don't. You can let stuff go and move on without having to forgive anybody. Like, I think it's a toxic mentality to teach your children. I think it's good to be able to not forgive everybody, because not everybody deserves your forgiveness. And I think that is... And she doesn't feel guilt for it, so she moves on. So basically, all this stuff goes down, like, all this shit. Elias comes to her rescue with the help of Tatiana, who was like, let's just make Chise come back. And he's like, no, if it's not of her own free will, there is no point. And so, they save her from Cartaphilus. They get cornered by, him, and they kind of trick him, which once again leads to Chise getting, like, stabbed in the chest. And Cartaphilus inside her body, because she switched eyes. She took out her eye, and Joseph took out his eye, and they, like, switched eyes. So now she also has the curse of Cartaphilus in her body, and he tells her, he's like, the dragon inside of you and I have reached an agreement that it will keep trying to kill you. He's like, but I will keep you alive, but one day it will succeed. And he's like, oh, isn't that like regular people? He's like, lucky for you. So in all the, like, instances of Cartaphilus being shown, he's not evil. He's just a tragic being, really. Joseph is the one who is mentally broken and become this evil being. Which is sad, because he started out as very sweet. Chise went from going to for sure die in like 3 years to now she will be alive for like a normal lifespan, basically. It's really sweet, because now, like, every time she leaves, like, she's like, I won't go off here, and they both have an understanding, and they have more open communication. And she's smiling, and she gets, like, a veil and a white dress given to her, and Elias and her meet outside, and then she's like, give me your left hand, and he's like, what? She's like, take off your glove, shut up, give me your left hand. You're left, that's your right. And she gives him a ring, and she's like, this is so we can, make sure we're safe. And he's like, but I hear the left hand is for wedding rings. And she's like, shut up. And so she's just trying to be slick about it. But there's the shot where she's in the gown and the veil, and the wind blows, and Elias, like, grabs his chest, and he's like, is this what beautiful is? And I just think it's so heartbreaking and wonderful that, like, they've reached this understanding, and he, like, picks her up, and he's like, well, you are my bride after all. And, like, when he first called her his bride, he actually had no idea what a bride meant. He thought, like, assistant. So I think it's neat how, like, they've both grown so much in the course of the anime. Like, and, like, but, like, I think some stuff that just, like, really stood out is how, like, anytime anyone wanted to manipulate Elias, they're like, okay, put Chise's well-being in the mix, bam, we got him. And then Chise also, to protect anyone she cares about, would do anything for them. So she was very self-sacrificing, and he was very, like, protective of her. But I do like that he learned, like, even when he, like, when he breaks, when she leaves, he even says to, like, Tatiana, he's like, we can't force her, because that wouldn't do me any good. Because like, me not listening to her is what led to this. And he also, like, believed, like, oh, if I do this, I don't have to feel the jealousy for Stella anymore. But it's like, no, it's normal for someone you love to have other relationships with people, and that's okay. I don't know, I just think the anime is so beautiful. The folklore is phenomenal. I love that the writer has taken it from, like, biblical folklore, North American folklore, which the Wendigo comes from, and they've done really well. They haven't really said what Elias is, but my standing theory is still he is a Wendigo, because that would make the most sense. I cannot wait for another season to happen, or what are you doing, baby? Sorry, that was a kiss break. That I really hope another season comes, because not everybody reads manga. That's okay. I think more people should, but I can't make people read. And it just needs more love. It's such a good series. Like, and there's, like, no merch for it either. It's so hard to find. But I do have my personal bias, because I do love folklore, and I'm gonna love it no matter what, if any kind of mythology or folklore. And I realized this video is, like, more than 30 minutes, but, like, I wanted to talk about it. I wanted to make sure I got my... And something I found cool about how with Tatiana and the fairy doctor, basically, or the fae doctor, that they both have, like, they're both, like, elegant and beautiful, but their husbands are very, like, childlike, which I found kind of interesting. But I think it did a really well wrapping up the anime. I don't think I have anything else to say. I think I wrote it all. But yeah, and I do like that, like, did you have to do a real apology, Ruth and Elias, that Ruth and Elias had to do a real apology, not like a fake one, like, oh, I'm sorry, like, they had to prove themselves, and that she even says, like, I'm still mad at you for what you guys tried to do. And I do like how Stella is a very, like, headstrong character, that she's like, hey, she still, like, bickers with Elias, and, is still friends with Chise. But it's a really good anime. Go watch it out. It's, I only watched the sub. I haven't actually watched the dub, so you let me know if it's good. I'll watch it eventually. It's just, I watched it when it aired. And, it's, licensed by Funimation if you want to check it out. And the manga is by 7 Seas, I believe. Give me a sec. I was grabbing one of my books. And yes, it is by 7 Seas. And this is the official guidebook. And the other thing, too, I really, really like is it's, like, it's set in England, and it actually, like, feels like England. It's not like, oh, and now they're eating, like, a rice ball. Like, it's very much, like, it stays true to where it takes place. And it's so magical, and the world building is stunning. Like, go watch it. And, like, if you can pick up the books, pick up the books. Like, so good. Look at this art. Look at this art. Stunning. But yeah, I'm gonna stop. Please comment below, because if I forgot anything, I do love chatting with you guys. Check out my Twitter, my Instagram if you'd like, and chat with me, because I love talking about anime and manga and things I love. Alright guys, I think that's everything. Farewell, my beautiful, beautiful beings. I hope you guys are staying safe, staying healthy. Baby, you gotta move. And that's about it. Alright guys, I'll see you later. Bye.